I'm Andrew Preston, and I'm author of Sword of the Spirit, Shield of Faith, Religion in American War and Diplomacy. It was my students who gave me the idea to write this book. In the spring of 2003, in the run-up to the Iraq War, I was teaching a seminar at Yale to 15 very talented Yale undergraduates about American foreign policy in the Cold War. And as we were talking about the 1960s and 1970s, American foreign policy history was unfolding before us in February and March and April of 2003. And my students and I discussed current foreign policy, and we discussed it in the light of history, of the history that I was teaching and that they were studying. But one thing really perplexed them. Why was everybody, George W. Bush, Osama bin Laden, even Tony Blair and Saddam Hussein, not normally religious people, why was everybody using religion to explain their foreign policies and their worldviews? And they asked me, is this normal? Was George W. Bush normal? Did all presidents use religion to explain their foreign policy? And I didn't have an answer for them. I didn't have a good answer for them because I didn't know. And I could think of a couple of examples. And then I went and looked in the historical record. I looked in history books to see what they said about religion and foreign policy, American diplomatic history, and there was almost nothing there. In fact, the only things I could find were on those usual suspects, those couple of figures in American diplomatic history who have popped up as religious, whose religion influenced their foreign policy. And so I thought, here's an obviously important subject with current contemporary relevance and enduring relevance that doesn't really have much of an historical backstory. And so I thought this could be a great book. My book's a finalist for the Charles Taylor Prize, and it's an incredible honor to reach this stage of Canada's premier award for literary nonfiction. It's a tremendous honor, and I'm extremely grateful for this recognition. Whether I win or not, it's fantastic to make it this far. The book has received a lot of attention in the United States as well, and it's got a lot of very positive reviews, and a lot of Americans themselves, I'm interested to see, are surprised that there is such a rich history of religion influencing the course of American war and diplomacy.
Talk about that.
When people think of the religious influence on American foreign policy, they normally think of religion being used to justify war and intervention, using the language of exceptionalism to spread the American mission, to convert other peoples of the world to the American way, even if they don't want to be converted. And that's a big part of my book. But one of the reasons this book took me a long time to write, it took nearly a decade, and ended up being much longer than I had originally planned, was because I hadn't anticipated just what a major part of the story the peace movement would become, and religious liberalism and religious pacifism. And so really the challenge in writing this book was in trying to integrate the familiar story of religious exceptionalism and war and empire and manifest destiny and all that sort of thing, with also an equally important and also equally prominent, at least in history, an equally prominent story of religion supporting pacifism, anti-war movements, peace movements, and those sorts of things. That took me a long time to really whip into shape. And I'm glad I did, because really the whole engine of the book, the narrative engine of the book, is really driven by debates among religious conservatives, religious liberals, people using religion to justify intervention, people using it to justify war. And the whole engine is driven by those debates and those arguments that Americans have had. The end product, I ultimately argue, is a very moralistic, idealistic foreign policy. That really makes America different. It makes American foreign policy different, and a lot of that comes down to religion.